Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Today is a travel day for the Browns. They are headed to Philadelphia. Joint practices tomorrow and Thursday against the Super Bowl champion Eagles. Then the preseason game, the second preseason game, Saturday at 1 o'clock in Philadelphia. Former NFL quarterback Chase Daniel, what he noticed relative to Shedeur Sanders as the game went on against the Panthers.
I thought from the first quarter to the second quarter, you saw a big improvement in going through progressions. Like he would throw some RPOs and it'd be the first read or run. There's a couple times where they were rushing 5 and he was like, hey, it's man to man. Yes, this guy's open. I don't really quite trust it yet. Let me run around. And that was on the 13-yard scamper around the right edge. The one I loved the most was, we talked about it, it was the second touchdown throw before the half. They have 2 out routes to the left, and they have a double post concept to the right. He has to read this left to right. So he reads the out route to the field or to the boundary. It's not there. He comes into the stick route, which is a 5-yard out route, but didn't like it. He moved through the progression to the through route, and the through route in a double post, it's supposed to grab the middle of the field safety. And when that happened, he moved right, got to his 4th progression, Tom, and it was a perfect throw. So he did settle in, and there was a couple throws in the second half that were really good too. I think a lot of college quarterbacks, really other than Jaden Daniels that I've studied coming out, they lock onto 1 or they lock onto 2. And it's taken time for Shedeur to learn a true NFL offense, because Kevin Stefanski isn't like, hey, just throw this guy. You have pre-snap reads, you have post-snap reads, you have checks, you have run game checks, you have all this stuff. So I think the way they're bringing him along, I think it's been really good.
The other thing is the movement in the pocket to kind of buy some time without running, which he did on that second touchdown. If you can do that in the NFL, you can have success. Former NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky, his thoughts on Shedeur Sanders against the Panthers.
Proved to me that he's absolutely demanding of more reps with the second and first teams, against the second and first teams. I've been very adamant that Cleveland should start one of these rookies. I really believe that. And what we saw from Shedeur coming off of the reports in the summer, everything out of camp has been Shedeur had another good day. Shedeur's been really good. Shedeur was the best quarterback in camp. And then you get the opportunity to start. And if you just ask, what did he look like? Comfort and total control. He played really fast. He didn't panic. Okay, so those are all the things that you saw. Then his own words, he had that smirk on his face of, I felt like I had the answers to the test. That's what it looked like. And then plays like this, I would actually be most encouraged by. One of the things for Shedeur coming out of the draft that I was critical of was, like, I don't think he's a ridiculous athlete, not a high-end athlete, kind of average. I thought he made some plays with his legs that I was really impressed with. So I think that, and for me, the result doesn't matter, and the opponent for me, Stephen A., doesn't matter, Shefty. It's what does it look like? And he looked like a guy that should be getting opportunity to say, nope, you're actually not good enough. If I were the Browns, he would be getting reps with the starters this week. I felt like going into the game, if he played a certain way, that would be the case. He should getting reps with the starters this week. And he should, I always say it this way, prove to me you can't do it. Prove to me you can't do it. And so far, he has not done that.
Now, again, I like Dan Orlovsky, but you can't, you got to have the veterans thinking that this is the guy that gives you the best chance of winning. Now, he's making progress, but it's still going to be Joe Flacco. So, you know, I would pump the brakes on starting Shedeur Sanders. There's a plan. It looks like the plan through 1-2 steps of it is working. Let's see what they do. And again, I thought he played well. Let's see what the next step is, and it's not rush him in with the ones, I don't think. Browns play-by-play voice, Andrew Siciliano. His thoughts about Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel in Saturday's preseason game, both trying to come back from hamstring injuries.
Just reading the tea leaves, be a little bit surprised if Kenny is out there on Saturday. I know he's battling. I know he's frustrated. I know he wants to play. I mean, considering it's a hometown game for him, considering he was there last year, you know, it's against friends. He could have family there, but I don't know. I can't say with any degree of certainty that he is going to be ready. So I think this is probably, assuming Dylan is healthy enough to get out there, his chance to shine, and he deserves that chance to play. And I'm eager to see what he could actually do. I'd love to see Shedeur as well. I'd be surprised if we see Joe Flacco, but let's get through the 2 joint days of practices first. And then next week is the most interesting week in my eyes because, again, big week here, but you would kind of sort of like to have an idea of who the guy is going to be before you head into that final preseason game with the Rams.
Yeah, all indications are it's going to be Joe Flacco, but again, it's not official, and there's no reason for Joe Flacco to play in the second preseason game. You get the joint practices, they'll get all the work they want there. Nathan Zgura, Browns radio analyst, who stood out to him in the Browns' first preseason game against Panthers?
Defense, I thought it was great to see Alex Wright back and with the starters, and he did a great job, got the sack, had another near sack. So I thought I was very impressed with what I saw from Alex Wright. I think if you're looking for an undrafted free agent that's got a chance to make this team, Aiden Huntington is the name I would pay attention to. He had a sack of himself. He's everywhere, was dominant on special teams. Guy's kind of a hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle, but also was a linebacker earlier in his career in college. So an interesting kind of athletic profile, similar to Sam Kamara, but 5 years younger. And I know the Browns like what they saw from him. Julian Acquara is going to be an interesting one because and ultimately you can't carry 6 defensive ends, but another 2 sacks in his return to his hometown in Charlotte. He's been terrorizing, our tackles, our third string tackles, second string tackles, all training camp. I thought he had a very nice showing as well. And then another would be Nick Needham on the defensive side. Nick Needham, a veteran, has slot experience. I thought of the slot corners out there, Cam Mitchell, Miles Harden, Nick Needham. I thought Needham looked the best, obviously came up with the big interception. And so he's somebody that could build a little momentum and try to make this football team. Because right now, I think our cornerback situation after Denzel and Greg Newsome is murky at best.
We'll have plenty more on the Browns. Fred Greetham, Orange and Brown Report, as well as Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report ahead in a few minutes. Let's turn our attention to the Guardians. Guardians, they've been playing well. They start play tonight, just a game behind the New York Yankees for the third and final American League wild card spot. They're going to need more production out of Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez if they're going to catch the Yankees and make a threat. Kwan hitting 195 in August, and his on-base percentage is only .214. Kwan was on Sirius XM Major League Channel talking about the core principles of his hitting.
I think it's always you have to be on the fastball. I mean, I was always on the fastball, and then Jose just hammers that home. He's always on the fastball. He's never – I mean, sometimes he'll sit it, but I think the simple way to say it is if you're on the fastball, you can hit the off-speed, but if you're on the off-speed, you can't hit the fastball. So at that point, it's like, okay, I'm going to cover as many pitches as I can, especially in 2 strikes. I don't know if it's an outlier, but I think it's cool to see the numbers are where they're at right now. What's I think really cool with Cleveland is that they didn't try to reinvent the wheel. They understood what I did really well in college and allowed me to expand on that. They talk about 3 pillars of hitting. It's impact quality, swing decision, and contact rate. So contact rate and swing decisions were always really good. My impact quality wasn't the greatest. So that was the one thing they said that you can kind of teach. The other things are kind of inherent. So they told me just like focus on those 2. Impact quality, we'll try to chip away at that as much as we can, but just stick at what you're good at and then see what happens. And then a couple off seasons ago, started working on some bat speed programs. Impact quality started ticking up a little bit. So it was cool that they were able to tinker it, but they let me be good at what I was good at. I think just understanding who I am. I have to look at myself in the mirror every day. I'm 5'8". I'm not going to grow from that. I'm not going to get probably more than 180 pounds. So, I see a bunch of other guys, big swingers, and they can muscle the ball out of here even if they don't square it up. But I know what my role on the team is going to be. It's get on base. The home runs have come a little more than they have in the past, which is nice. But those are going to come, especially just by knowing pitchers, seeing their pitch sequences, and just being in the game long enough, you kind of know what the plans are. But at my core, I'm going to be a guy that gets on base, tries to cause some havoc on the bases.
Yeah, so you mentioned Kwan, 195, Ramirez 194. So the 2 guys that have really made that offense go, hitting under 200 in August, and somehow Guardians keep right in there with the American League wild card. They're going to need those 2 guys to get hot if they're going to make a run. Guardians open up a 3-game series against the Marlins, who had been playing better. They've lost 4 in a row. It will be Logan Allen and Jason Junk on the mound for the Marlins. First pitch tonight at 6:40 over at Progressive Field. Time for us to take a quick timeout. Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report is up first. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports for CLE. Nathan Zagura, Browns radio analyst, with his thoughts on Shedeur Sanders' performance in the first preseason game.
I think he really applied himself to this game. He's a gamer, there's no doubt. And yeah, that was encouraging. Does it change? As I said, in many ways, this game changes everything and at the same time changes nothing. I don't think it necessarily moved where he is on the depth chart. I think the starting competition, as I've always said, was between Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. And I think, the injury to Kenny Pickett, if he's not able to go fully in Philadelphia this week, that's going to kind of end that competition right there. Because you can't miss 4 weeks of training camp. You just can't and be the starter on a new team. So Joe Flacco, I think will get the nod if that continues in that path. And then as far as the rookies go, both of these guys, developmental guys, obviously they picked Dylan first. Dylan's had a few more opportunities this off season. And, I think that'll continue to be the case. But in the sense of change, what Shedeur Sanders is something that cannot be dismissed. It cannot be ignored. It's a step. He's got to keep making the right steps. But if he does, as I believed all along, Shedeur Sanders has the ability to be the answer at that position for a franchise that certainly is looking for the answer.
With that, let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I don't want to get too carried away. It's one preseason game. He did some things that were pretty high-level quarterback. And again, it's vanilla. It's not, but it's a good first step, I think, would be the way I'd respond to it. What are your thoughts about Sanders?
Yeah, it's better than a complete disaster. I mean, I wrote about it before the game that this will be the biggest overreaction no matter which way it goes. If he goes out and falls flat on his face, it'll be a total overreaction. If he goes and lights it up, it'll be a total overreaction. That's just kind of how it was. All you have to do is think just recently, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, another 5th-round pick. They had the Hall of Fame game. I think it was 3 years ago after he was picked, and he just lit it up in that game. And there was a lot of people ready to go with, anoint him. Boy, he's going to be a great quarterback. And then we saw how that turned out. So I think it was a great start. I was very impressed with his play. And I just think the one thing about this, Dave, is that if this works, this really is, going to set the Browns up in much better position. Because if he would have been taken 2 overall in the first round, I mean, he would expect to be the starter. But because he's a 5th-round pick, they can really let him go at his pace. And I just feel like if he continues to improve at this pace, you're not going to be able to keep him off the field. And I don't really look at this as you want him to do well and Gabriel not to do well or vice versa. You want them both to do well because it would set the Browns up great if both of them showed that they could be the franchise quarterback. And you have 2 good quarterbacks, as we know in the NFL. You need good quarterbacks. You need to have them both on rookie contracts, and you could have one as a starter and the other as a backup. So I like what I saw, and now I'm anxious to see Gabriel and see if Sanders can back it up and have another solid performance this week.
I know you wrote an article. Does that reset the quarterback depth chart? Everybody was like, oh, he's got to move up. They have a plan, and I don't when you take enough time to develop a plan, I don't know how quickly you deviate from it if you're Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry.
Yeah, Kevin Stefanski has maintained that. I mean, that's what I talked about, overreaction. I wrote that article, but kind of know publicly or when Kevin Stefanski speaks in press conferences, he's not going, I don't expect him to really have any earth shattering news. Changing the depth chart, everybody overreacted a little bit. I think the PR people, nothing against the PR people, but they put out the unofficial depth chart, and everybody looks at that to see if they, changed anything. But no, I expect this week, these will be big practices, tomorrow and Thursday with the Eagles. You're going to see Flacco probably get most of the 11 on 11. I'd be interested to see if the young guys get in any of that. But I do believe you're going to see Sanders and Gabriel play pretty much the whole game against the Eagles. The biggest question is who would start. Would Gabriel start and Sanders come in, or vice versa? I would think Gabriel will start and Sanders will come in more the second half. But we'll see. I mean, this is a production business. And like I said, if they both play well, that bodes well for the Browns now and in the future.
Yeah, I know the unstated thing here is Joe Flacco is probably, you're getting close to 90% going to be the starting quarterback, barring some sort of last minute injury, 80 to 90%. I know you wrote an article about him, his confidence in how he's playing and what he has left.
We talked to him after the practice in Carolina, and he said he's very confident that he can continue to play well. He said he's not here just to sit the bench or just collect another check for something like college fund for his kids. He wants to play. He feels the more reps, it kind of is not good for Pickett and Gabriel even, but it's finally allowed Flacco to get more and more reps. He's taken all the 11 on 11s, with the first team basically the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so he said that it has allowed him to get into a rhythm. He said even at 40 or being around 18 years, he said, when you get 3 plays, you're kind of thinking, I got to do real well in this so I get more. And this has allowed him to get more work and to get into a rhythm. And I felt like from day one, with the schedule they have, he should be the starting quarterback to at least start the season. It's always easier to go to Pickett or Gabriel or Sanders after you start with the 40-year-old. But I think he gives you the best chance to win because he's been in these situations, and why would you not take advantage of that aspect of his game, his experience?
All right, before we go to break, word came out coming back from Carolina. Myles Garrett gets a speeding ticket over 100 miles an hour in Strongsville, similar to what happened with Shedeur Sanders about a month ago. With Garrett, he had the thing where he had he flipped his car over and he had the accident in it. I think these guys got to stop this.
Well, I mean, I think it was 3 years ago he pretty near died, when he flipped the car and I don't know. I mean, anybody can get a little lead foot, but here's your leader of the team kind of vowed they really, gave him the contract, more, maybe not vocal, but even lead by example. And, and here, like, you had Shedeur Sanders had a couple of them a month ago, and now you got the leader of your team kind of doing the same thing. So I don't know what kind of example you're setting. It's the same thing with other legal issues. It's kind of a cultural thing, but I would think you're not going to be able to enjoy the 160 million if you keep driving like that, because even if you are a pretty good driver, all it takes somebody to to jut out in front of you or make a move and that you didn't see coming from somebody else, and you're in, not playing football anymore.
Yeah. So again, we'll don't want to talk about it, but it's in the news. You got to mention it. Fred Greetham and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about Mason Graham, Browns rookie defensive tackle. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Mason Graham, Browns' first-round pick, reached out to Malik Collins, a defensive tackle who the Browns signed as a free agent in the offseason. The two worked out together, and Graham explained why he reached out to Collins in the first place.
I just like the way he plays, and then when I seen he got signed here, I immediately attached myself to him, and I just, as a player, has done a lot of good things. He can really rush the passer, so I just thought, I've seen him around before, because we worked with the same guy, but just thought he was a good, veteran player that I should, try to model after and do what he does.
So you had watched a bunch of his film previously. What do you like so much about his game?
I just like his twitchiness, and he's sudden. He can he'll run through guys, and he'll just make people miss too. So I just feel like he's an all-around good player.
Fred, what did you think of the way the defensive line in particular played? It was, you had guys that are fighting for, the back end of that roster spot, making plays and getting sacks.
Yeah, I liked what I saw in the little bit of Mason Graham. I liked in talking to him yesterday, he's not satisfied. He thinks he has a lot to learn, a lot to do, a lot to improve on. And yet in the little time I saw him kind of bull rush and move, he was getting double teamed. I think on the third play of the game, they were double teaming him. And that was the first team Panthers offense. So that will bode well if teams are going to try. Now, obviously Myles Garrett wasn't out there, but if they try to double team him when Myles Garrett's out there, Garrett's going to have a heyday. And likewise, they can't double team everybody. So Malik Collins right next to him, I like that they're going to drive each other. And I like the young guy. He doesn't act like, he's very unassuming. You would have a tough time saying this guy was the 5th player picked in the draft. He just looks kind of like that blue collar, go to work, lunch pail guy that just shows up and does his job. But he talked about, since he's been here, dropping some fat, getting more lean body mass, and now building strength back up. So I like what I saw the other night. I like what I saw Carson Schwesinger, and I think those two guys, they really need them to hit the ground running, because they lost 3 starters before they even start the season. Of course, they knew JOK was not going to play this year, and that's one of the big reasons they brought in Schwesinger. But then Hicks retired, and so Schwesinger was probably, someday they kind of thought maybe would take over for Hicks, but he's now taken over as the green dot as a rookie. And then you lost Martin Emerson. So they need those two guys inside to really step up. And so far, so good. I like what I saw out of both of them. I thought Schwesinger, he was only in a little bit. He had 6 tackles. He was, at least in the first game, he was a tackling machine, and that's kind of what he was billed as, led the FBS in solo tackles last year. So I like Julian Aquare. I think he had a couple sacks. Alex Wright had a sack. I like the pressure. And even some of that was against the Panthers' first team. But that's what Jim Schwartz has vowed, is that aggressive attacking pass rush in the defensive lines where it comes from. That's what they're going to need this year.
So you wrote an article, Schwesinger kind of you and I have been covering the Browns for a long time. Schwesinger kind of puts you in mind of another linebacker who had a pretty good career with the Browns.
Yeah, Clay Matthews, and not the one that played for the Packers. You know, most
His
people.
dad.
That's the one. Yeah, we're talking Clay the third's dad, Clay Jr., because his dad was Clay Sr., who played in the NFL as well. But no, Clay Matthews drafted in 1978. You talk about a good draft. That year they took Ozzie Newsome. They had 2 first-round picks. They took Ozzie Newsome with the 13th pick, I think, overall, and Clay Matthews with like the 22nd pick. And one's a Hall of Famer and the other one should be. But when I first saw Schwesinger on the field back in rookie minicamp, he had his shorts rolled up, kind of like I remember Clay Matthews doing that. And he had the blonde hair a little bit coming out from under his helmet, kind of like Clay Matthews was known for. It just reminded me a bit of him. I'm not trying to put, that would be a tall, shoes to fill. I think he played 19 years in the NFL, Matthews, that is, 16 with the Browns, 3 with the Falcons. But if he can come anywhere close to that type of career, the Browns will have really a home run there. And so I like what I've seen. I like his attitude. He's very hungry, very similar to Graham. Kind of brings his lunch bucket and ready to go to work every day. Doesn't seem like he's overwhelmed by the NFL. And he did it the hard way. He was a walk-on at UCLA, earned a spot on special teams. And really last year was the only year that he really started, and he led the nation in solo tackles with 90. And so, he's not assuming anything either. He's trying to, build it up. And, I just felt like in seeing him, if they get anything close to Clay Matthews' production, they'll have hit a home run.
In my mind, if Graham and Schwesinger are successful and play like it looks like they might, this defense is set up for some success with Jim Schwartz as its defensive coordinator.
Biggest concern is secondary to me. You lose Emerson. So now you've had Greg Newsome. He always seems to get dinged up, and he's missed time. And he's limited. I don't expect that he'll practice against the Eagles. Maybe he will, but he won't play in the game. And so they need him healthy, and they need him to bounce back. I felt Emerson and Newsome both had down years, and this is the last year with Newsome. He's trying to earn a second contract. He's kind of in the Jed Wills situation where they gave him a 5th-year option, guaranteed $13 million, but they did that with Wills, but then they let him walk, and nobody signed him to date. But Newsome, whether it's here or somewhere else, and the Browns, he said he wants to finish his career here, but if he wants to get paid, he's got to play much better than he did last year. And then you don't have a whole lot of depth. You got some young guys, Cameron Mitchell and Miles Harden are really the candidates behind Ward and Newsome. They signed a couple cornerbacks yesterday, so they're looking for answers, and then the secondary, you got Delpit, then you're hoping Hickman can, at safety, you're hoping he can hold the job, and then a couple veterans, and then a couple young guys. So I think the linebacking crew will be okay, and the defensive line, that'll set the tone. The secondary is really where I think they need a year like they had 2 years ago. And I think a lot of that comes down to takeaways, getting some turnovers.
Yeah, I'm with you. With Emerson down, the bigger wide receivers like McMillan, like A.J. Brown concern me. So we'll see how they are able to deal with that. Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll look ahead to the joint practices with the Eagles coming up tomorrow and Thursday when we return. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Former NFL quarterback Danny Canal, his thoughts on Browns rookie running back Dylan Sampson.
Dylan Sampson is a stud. That was a steal in the 4th round. We've seen many backs launch into stardom that were, 3rd and 4th round picks. Dylan Sampson could be that guy. At Tennessee, led the SEC in rushing yards and touchdowns. Keep an eye on his name throughout the season.
Okay. Fred, it's kind of interesting. Sampson's a young guy. He's not even 21 yet. So younger guy. Who do you think assumes the lead back role? And I'm assuming, let's assume for the sake of conversation that Quinshon Judkins gets some form of a suspension. Who's the lead back? That's a huge. They got to answer that question.
I think Jerome Ford will get the first crack. He's held the job the last 2 years. That's kind of how they've done in practice. It would have been interesting if Judkins would have been here, if he would have immediately become the starter, because that's what it was looking like to me in the spring practices. When you take a guy, a running back, 36th overall, especially, the way Andrew Berry values running backs is not, really usually going up and using a big asset on them. I think that Ford would get the first nod and Sampson would be the 3rd down, change of pace back. And I think that there's a very good chance if he can be productive that he could work his way into being the starter. But I think it would probably be more of a committee. If you remember Nick Chubb's heyday here, we were all calling for him getting the ball more, and he still only would get 15, 18 carries at the most. They still use the other backs, Hunt or Ford or whoever. But I do think the Judkins thing is a big blow to their plans. They never would say it or admit it, but I mean, when you take a guy 36th overall and you let Nick Chubb walk, you're saying we're overhauling the running back with the wide zone scheme. We're going back to running the ball and setting up the play action and getting back to their roots with the offensive line that they have. You draft Judkins to be that guy, and then he's not even here. He's pretty much is going to miss the whole training camp, and you don't know beyond. I've heard something that maybe within a week there'll be some movement on it, but I don't know. The NFL gets involved. He could miss the first 6 games, and those are probably the biggest stretch of the season to start that you needed him, because those tough games that you wanted to run the ball, play defense, shorten the game, that sidelined you. But Dylan Sampson was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year last year. I think he led the SEC in rushes, had like 258. So he can be the bell cow. He also led it in rushing. I think he had 1,461 yards, and he led in touchdowns with 22. SEC's a pretty good conference, and I know he's not big, 5'8", 200. I remember he was injured against the Buckeyes. He had a hamstring injury, and they kept showing him on the sideline. But, I think he could be a real steal in the 4th round. And I think he's motivated knowing that he was taken behind Judkins. This gives him a chance to show that maybe he could be the lead back.
All right, so tomorrow and Thursday, Browns will have joint practice against the Eagles in Philadelphia. Browns radio analyst Nathan Zagura, what he's watching for in those joint practices.
Well, this is a real measuring stick, right? You're going against the defending Super Bowl champions. You're going to get a lot of starters on Wednesday and Thursday, and then I think the game will be similar to Carolina, a lot of 2s and 3s going the whole way. I think it'll be our first, opportunity to see Dylan Gabriel and some meaningful teamwork as well. But I'm excited to see Joe Flacco. I'm excited to see our offensive line against their very good defensive line, and our very good defensive line against their very good offensive line. So I think the trenches will be very interesting. And this is one where you want to go and you want to say, look, we can hang, right? We can hang. We can be on this level. Back in 23, we went there and had a good day 1. I think day 2, the Eagles certainly got the best of us, but maybe that was a harbinger. That was a Browns team that ended up going to the playoffs that year despite a lot of adversity. So hopefully we can go out there and have a strong showing, but I think it'll be a real good work for our ones against, the defending Super Bowl champs. That's coming off last year, best team in the National Football League. So I think that'll be really, really good work for us.
So, Fred, what would be good things to hear coming out of the joint practices? What would be concerning thing? And the ones are going to play in the joint practices probably aren't going to play on Saturday. They're not. And so these joint practices are more important relative to what's going on with the team than the preseason game. What would be good things to hear? What would be concerning things to hear from the joint practices?
Well, yeah, I circled this from the first time the schedule came out, that this was the highlight of training camp, where probably the most decisions when they talked about quarterback competition and so forth. This is really, the Panthers won practice, but then these two against the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, you're going to be able to measure, now you probably won't even measure Kenny Pickett. So see Joe Flacco behind that offensive line. The offensive line of the Browns against the defensive line of the Eagles, which they're noted for, all you had to do was watch the Super Bowl, and they dominated the Super Bowl and led to their win. The quarterback, I think Mahomes couldn't even get the ball off. He was on the ground and hit so many times. So I'm anxious to see, how the veteran offensive line does with DeJuan Jones at left tackle, and going against this vaunted defensive line of the Eagles, and see if the Browns can get anything going. We talked about Ford and Sampson in the running game, and then flip it around. I want to see the Browns defensive line going against the Eagles have a good offensive line, although I know they just lost their two guards. Dickerson had a knee injury, their Pro Bowler, and the other one's dinged up too. So I think this still will be a good measuring stick to see how the defensive line looks going against the Eagles' offensive line. I mean, this is the defending Super Bowl champion, so you're going to get as good of a indicator, because they're going to go, Sirianni and Stefanski, the reason they're doing this, they're friends, they have similar mindsets, and they want to see each other and be able to measure each other up, as far as the Browns, to evaluate how their guys stack up, against the Super Bowl champion in a controlled practice.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Always good stuff for the Orange and Brown Report. He is the senior analyst. Quick timeout. Other side of the break, Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Couple things for you. First one, Shedeur Sanders. He looked good. It's time to give him some reps with the one, and they should also bring over to that squad the one guy, I can't really pronounce his name, Leverdeen, I believe. And number two, when do you think they'll give him some reps with the ones? I mean, come on, he's passing every test. He says all the right things, So the kid's going to be good. I hope we don't get rid of him. All right, Dave, you be good. Love you, brother. You and the family be safe, and God bless.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Pete, I think Sanders did pass that first test. I'm not as concerned with him getting first-team reps with the offense unless he's going to be playing with the first-teamers in a preseason game. That's kind of where I'm at with that. What are your thoughts on Sanders getting first-team reps?
I mean, I think it makes sense on a lot of levels, but the bigger problem is you have to get ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. And unless the Browns are in a position where they are seriously considering Shedeur Sanders to start that game, and all indications are they're not, then it's time to get presumably Joe Flacco ready to go. So, we saw Monday's practice. Joe Flacco got every single rep with the ones. We'll see if that holds up, but that may be where the Browns have sort of decided that we're moving on to get ready to try to win football games. That's not to say that Shedeur shouldn't be developed. That's not to say his development isn't important, but you have to balance what is going to be best for Shedeur Sanders and what is ultimately going to be, more importantly, best for the Cleveland Browns. And I think Shedeur Sanders can still get a lot of value out of repping with the twos. He seemed to be, I guess, in some ways ahead of Dylan Gabriel, at least for the one practice. That may carry over, but I don't think he's losing anything in how they're developing him, as illustrated by how he performed.
Yeah, so having said that, and I agree with you, what are the next steps for Shedeur then? Assuming you're getting Flacco ready to play against the Bengals, how do you give him a little bit more? What's the next step for Sanders?
Yeah, so I mean, some of this is going to bleed into the season, but for the moment, it's repping with those twos. It's really cleaning up some of the little things that he didn't do right in the preseason. There are a couple throws he would have liked to have had back. There's some process things that could have gone better, and then just continuing to build on the strengths he has. He's a tremendous passer in terms of some of the throws he can make and accuracy and stuff like that. That's why you drafted him. That is why people thought he could be a first or second round talent. And it's just building on those things and getting him more comfortable in everything he's doing. The thing that I like with Sanders in one thing is how sort of harsh a critic he is of himself and sort of understanding the process of what is going to make him better. Everybody sort of wants for Sanders to be moved along faster. It certainly seems like Sanders is very comfortable with the process the Browns have engaged with him. And again, there's a little bit of the results are in what we're seeing. He played really well. Something is working there.
Did you? I was surprised he was a little bit more athletic than I thought, and I don't know why that is, but I saw him avoid the rush. I saw him kind of get 10, 11 yards and pick up a first down. Were you surprised at his athleticism at all, or was that his lack of athleticism overplayed in the draft process, do you think?
Well, he's slow. Like, he is genuinely slow. If you might be able to beat him in a 40-yard dash, but he's very twitchy. He's quick. Like, those short area movements are where he sort of excels. So from that standpoint, it works out for him. Now, the other part about this is in preseason, this is the time of the schedule where running quarterbacks generally thrive because teams are playing a whole lot of man coverage or base coverages. They aren't necessarily looking for a running quarterback. So if you're going to run, this is the time to do it. Now, to his credit, he did a good job of recognizing when he should run and when he should take those chances. But when we get into the season, I think, running quarterbacks become more difficult to accomplish what they're doing in the preseason. Like, you saw the same thing with Justin Fields. It was very easy because teams are playing very vanilla.
So reports are that Kenny Pickett won't be doing any 11-on-11s in the joint practice, still recovering from that hamstring injury. How important is that? Is he a guy that now kind of becomes fringe relative to the roster?
I don't know that he's necessarily fringe, and some of that is by virtue of the fact that the Browns are probably going to be dealing with 2 suspensions. And by having 2 suspensions, it makes it very easy for them to keep all 4 quarterbacks, even if that is just to make teams sort of give them a real offer in terms of a trade. The Browns really like what Kenny Pickett offers them. They've been higher on him than most anyone else has in terms of public versus their perception. But it's not unreasonable to say that the injury has limited him to a point where it may prevent him from making a strong case to start. I think, again, every indication is that Joe Flacco is going to be the starter, and this hamstring has really limited Kenny Pickett's sort of time to refute that argument. The Browns can't wait, and Joe Flacco obviously came in with trust of the team that Kenny Pickett had to earn, and beyond whatever he's able to do on the field, that hurts his ability to sort of build that trust with his teammates.
Biggest takeaways for you from that first preseason game against the Panthers?
Well, I mean, beyond Shedeur Sanders playing reasonably well and making a couple of great throws, I mean, the biggest thing that I want to see in the first preseason game is, can you block? Can you tackle? And I thought the Browns were very effective, surprisingly effective, honestly, on both lines of scrimmage. I was impressed with their push, even with some of the Panthers ones in there. I like the fact that the Browns were able to create some running lanes. That was a pleasant surprise, even with the twos. And then defensively, they put guys on the ground. The defensive line was very impressive. They were able to create pressure, clog up running lanes, and guys made tackles. And those are all things that they did not do well all the time last year. And given how the Browns are going to have to win football games, those are areas they are going to have to excel.
So I know you wrote an article for the Orange and Brown Report, the earned toughness approach to training camp. And I think it kind of goes into what we saw. Again, it's one preseason game. Do you think that's working, the whole mindset that Kevin Stefanski is trying to instill?
I mean, we won't know the full answer for a couple more weeks, but I think the early signs are promising. Obviously, last year, the Browns were not prepared, and there were some mitigating circumstances with injuries they were dealing with that sort of limited how they were practicing. But just how bad it went last year in terms of coming out of the gate, the injuries they incurred even as they tried to protect their guys, caused them to reevaluate the entire process. This year, some of it is a product of what this team needs to be successful. They need to be a great defense. They need to be able to run the ball. They need to be able to shorten games. They need to be able to play smart football, avoid turnovers, all those things. So they have played, practiced with a tougher mentality, more difficult practices, faster practices, and we're seeing more tackling than ever before in the Kevin Stefanski area. And the first preseason game suggested that it's working. Reports came out that the joint practices that the Browns were the more physical team in that first practice, that the Panthers weren't quite ready for full contact the way the Browns were. And then you saw it in the preseason game. I thought the Browns dictated the action throughout the game. In addition, the other element was, the Browns were trying to rep 4 quarterbacks. And granted, it's, a very small sample size of one game with one quarterback. But given, how much criticism we've heard about how the Browns are handling Shedeur Sanders, that they're sabotaging Shedeur Sanders, that somehow they drafted a kid and want him to fail only for him to go out and play really well, that suggests that that's working too. Now, all of this could go out the window if the Browns then get stomped by the Eagles this week, but at least it suggests that they're at least prepared physically for what's to come, and hopefully that continues.
All right, before we go to break, what did you think of the defense? You mentioned the tackling. What else jumped out about that defense?
Yeah, so again, the tackling, I thought Carson Schwesinger was excellent in what they need him to do. Now, look, he had the stat line looks great for 4 tackles in the 13 snaps. I thought the one where he bent back and made the tackle on that hook curl area was really impressive. Otherwise, he's basically doing exactly what they need him to do. He's a physical presence in the middle who put guys on the ground and took advantage of what the defensive line was giving them. The other thing that sort of jumped out at me is just I don't think the secondary, at least early in the game, was terribly impressive. That's an area that they're going to have to clean up. Obviously, coming off the Martin Emerson injury, obviously a big question mark they have to answer. But I didn't see anything, at least early, that sort of made me feel terribly great about that situation, at least right now.
Yeah, McMillan had the big wide receiver had a catch downfield. The one thing later in the game, couple of turnovers, which is always good to see, and we haven't seen that even in the preseason in a while.
Right, and credit where it's due. Special teams played really well, and Bubba Ventrone's unit was not good last year. I think there's a little bit of pressure on him this year, and at least through the one game, they got the turnover on the muff punt. Buki Watson recovers the fumble. Gage Larvadain almost breaks the punt return. You got a lot of good stuff. Coverage units did really well. I think that was pleasant to see as addition to everything else.
Is Larvadain a guy that's kind of sneaking his way into maybe getting a 53, or is he still fighting an uphill battle because of the 4 quarterbacks and the limited roster spots on the 53, do you think?
From what we've learned at the OBR, he's got a real shot. He's done enough. For one thing, he can return kicks, which is always going to be valuable. He's played well. And then the thing the Browns are always enamored with, they cannot help themselves. Larvadain's got speed, and the Browns never feel like they have enough of it. And he may give you an extra element, but it's not like he's just running down the field and trying to catch vertical routes. He was running real routes. He caught a couple really nice passes. So there's a lot of growth you're seeing from him.
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Now you're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Love the show. I thought it was a pretty good weekend with the preseason game. I'm not sure about too many standouts. I mean, Schwesinger looked good. Shedeur looked good. The kid from South Carolina looks really good. Hopefully he can be kept around maybe the 53-year practice squad. I think he's going to be good. But for the running backs, I don't know. I seen the guy on the show yesterday. He made a big deal for that Marshall kid, but he didn't impress me. But I was impressed by the kid from the UFL. He kind of reminded me, I'm not going to say he's a Nick Chubb guy or a Kareem Hunt guy, but he's kind of a bigger, like, I'm running to make contact type of runner. And he looked good. He hits the hole fast, and, he runs with authority. So I kind of liked him. Just want to hear your thoughts. Go Browns. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Pete, referring to Amani Marshall from Appalachian State and Toa Tua, I think that's how you say his name, the UFL running back. It's going to be tough for either one of them to get on the roster. And a lot of it depends on what happens ultimately with Quinshon Judkins, which we still don't have any clarity. Kevin Stefanski said, nope, nothing new yesterday with that.
Right. Let's assume that Judkins is suspended for the sake of projecting a roster. I think it's going to be tough for any of the running backs beyond Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson to make the roster. Like my initial thought is that the third running back is not on this team. Having said that, Amani Marshall made me take notice, and it's not because he does anything particularly like special in terms of athleticism or stuff. The thing that stands out for me is he just does his job. He gets yardage you ask him to get. He's competitive. Obviously made a terrific block on the second touchdown pass from Shedeur Sanders. Those things get you noticed. And when running back coaches can rely on a guy to just do their job and just get tough yardage, that gets you a lot of leeway, and maybe that gets you to the practice squad, or maybe they feel good about him where they end up keeping on the roster. But again, I've looked around the league. I just think there's so much talent out there that teams aren't going to be able to hold on to. I suspect that's going to be a waiver claim later. But still, that is one of the things watching going forward. These next two preseason games. Can one of these running backs do enough to impress? Even Trevion Henderson, I thought, did some nice things for the Browns. The former Bengals running back who's sort of operating that Pierre Strong role was intriguing.
Yeah, bigger guy who's been in the league 6 years. Do you think, we mentioned running back, and there's a lot of guys, the Browns are going to have to cut a defensive lineman that can play in the league. They have so many of them. Could you see that kind of thing where they maybe can get a little bit of an upgrade in somebody's running back that could be the third or fourth guy to place for a lineman that they can't keep?
Okay, so to me, this is arguably the most intriguing element of what's going on with this team. There are three guys that I think are really intriguing from this. Shelby Harris is 34 years old. He literally celebrated his 34th birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Shelby Harris. He's been terrific for the Browns, but Cameron Thomas and Aiden Huntington are really impressing this team. Cameron Thomas was all over the field in the preseason game, got really good grades from PFF and everything else. Aiden Huntington is a physical freak who was making tackles on kickoff and punt at 280 pounds. He was also on punt return. They love him too. If there's a scenario where the Browns decide, that we love these two guys so much that they want to cut Shelby Harris because simply looking towards the future, I could see that. Failing that, there may be a scenario where, those guys are good enough, either Huntington or more likely Thomas is good enough that a team wants to trade for that guy, and it may be a player for player swap. It may be something the Browns have done in the past where they get like a 6th round pick or something like that. But that area of the roster has been so good. And the Browns just keep finding guys that can contribute, that becomes an interesting spot for them to sort of make a play somewhere.
Yeah, it'll be fun to keep an eye on that as it goes along. Browns radio analyst Nathan Zagura, what he saw from one of those guys in the middle, Mason Graham, in his first preseason game.
He was getting doubled a lot, and I thought, on the touchdown, for example, that Bryce Young threw, he basically took 2 guys into the backfield. Now, Bryce Young was able to escape and break contain out to the right, but again, he's on the interior. His job is to collapse that pocket. I thought he did that well. Yeah, Robert Hunt was a Pro Bowler last year, so you're going to get to learn some things as you go through the games. But I thought overall, I thought Mason was very positive. I know the Browns were very happy with his performance as well. And then you mentioned Carson, 13 snaps, 6 tackles, 4 solo tackles. The guy led the nation in solo tackles a year ago. Not surprised. He's everywhere. I got a little nervous when it looked like he got his toe kind of caught in the turf there on the incompletion to McMillan when he did 3 too many jukes on that slant route. And Bryce Young's pass kind of whizzed by him before he could get his head around. But I thought, very impressive from Schwesinger, very impressive from Mason Graham. And then the rookies on offense, Fannin and Dillon, they weren't out there very much. They were certainly not asked to do a whole heck of a lot in this game, as I think that, as things stand right now, they're going to be very involved in the regular season.
It's kind of interesting. If Mason Graham's getting doubled when Myles Garrett isn't out on the field, imagine what's going to happen. He's going to be like, man, this is a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, when the Browns are really going at it, he's probably not going to see that many double teams. But this is good practice for him. This is good work to help him improve. And he's said himself he's down to 290, so that adds an element of trying to improve his athleticism and his body composition. But Myles Garrett, Malik Collins, eventually Mike Hall come back. Yeah, he's going to get less attention, and hopefully he's going to be able to make a bigger impact. But for the time being, he's doing his job, which is part of what allowed Carson Schwesinger to play so well. Complementary football from that standpoint. The D-line is creating opportunities, and a talented linebacker like Schwesinger capitalizes.
Yeah, and best thing is those two are going to get to know each other a little bit better and play off each other as the season goes on. All right, joint practices against the Eagles. Step up in weight class, the defending Super Bowl champs tomorrow and Thursday. What are you paying attention to in those 2 joint practices?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just how do they measure up? Carolina, I think, is going to be an improved team, but they're not the defending Super Bowl champions. Like, in terms of trying to get a sense of what the Browns really are going to be this year, this is sort of their best indication before we get to the regular season. The Eagles are a terrific team. Now, they are dealing with some injuries on the interior offensive line. How is that going to play out? Are the Browns going to be able to take advantage with their talented defensive line? But the Eagles have extremely talented receivers. Is the secondary going to be able to sort of match up against those guys? There's a lot going on in addition to the quarterback play. The Browns receivers, how are they going to match up against a talented Eagles secondary that's got a couple things they're trying to figure out? Offensive line going against an Eagles team that lost a few guys but has reloaded and has a ton of talent there. Are they going to be able to run the ball? Those are all super important elements to this team. In terms of how they're going to be able to play, the way they want to play. There is no better test for the Browns than the Philadelphia Eagles. And seeing if they come out of this feeling really good about themselves, that might be an indication that the Browns are going to be perhaps a better team than maybe some teams are projecting, or I should say some experts are projecting, where they're talking about under 5.5, or people are already in this woe is me, they're going to be 3-14 again. This is where they get to sort of make a statement one way or the other and say, hey, we're either going to be a better team than this, or we've got a lot still to work on.
So along those lines, what would be good things to hear coming out of the joint practice? What would be things that you're going, it's not great?
Yeah, I think the line of scrimmage is the most important element. Obviously, the offensive line coming off question marks from last year. The offense was changed. Are we going to find out, it was just, changing back to the offense that they've been comfortable with has been the trick, that's going to fix everything? Or are we going to sit here coming out of this going, they're really showing their age and we're not sure what they're going to be able to give us this year? Defensively, the Eagles are a terrific team. Can the defense give them something to think about? Can they stifle them at times? Can they really make the Eagles sort of take notice of how good this group is? And that, I think the front will be fine. I think the linebackers should be okay. It's really a question of, one, is Greg Newsome going to be able to practice? That's a big part. Even if he isn't, Denzel Ward will be out there, and then can other guys fill in? Cameron Mitchell, Miles Harden, anyone else they're looking at to potentially evaluate for that number 3 spot. And then Ronnie Hickman continuing to try to make a case that he should be the starting free safety. That's going to be the group against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. The Eagles have a lot of talent there, and this is a team that can really make the Browns question what they're doing in the secondary.
All right, before I let you go, preseason game. A lot of the ones aren't going to play. Other than Sanders, Shedeur, what are you paying attention to? What are you looking closely at in that game Saturday at 1?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, I want to see Dylan Gabriel play. I mean, he's in some ways been sort of unfairly, harshly criticized for a guy who hasn't actually really gotten out there and done anything. And some of this is just hype around Shedeur Sanders, which is fine. And Shedeur has done well for himself. Can Dylan Gabriel get out there and respond? Can we see some of these guys continue to make strong cases for themselves? Gage Larvadain, Caden Davis are 2 guys that are seemingly have a shot to make the roster. Can one of these running backs sort of make a real statement? And then guys like Cameron Thomas and Aiden Huntington, can they play well enough that they make it so difficult for the Browns that they have to put them in a really awkward position in terms of how they're going to make decisions on roster cut down?
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Pete.
Thanks for having me. Pete
Smith, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, really good Brown stuff all the time. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.